There was always another chance. That was the operating belief. Theirs, not yours. Every time they pulled away, every time the cycle ran, every time you reached and they didn't quite meet you, there was still tomorrow. Still the possibility of choosing differently next time. Still the quiet, unexamined confidence that you would be there until the moment they realized you wouldn't. Not that you were angry, not that you'd made a dramatic decision, simply that the window had closed, that the last chance had passed, that the person who had always been available was now genuinely and irreversibly unavailable. Why does the realization of last chance land differently than every other form of loss the avoidant has managed? Why does someone who created distance so fluently seem completely unprepared for the distance that became permanent? What collapses inside someone when they understand, not intellectually, but in the body, that they ran out of chances with a specific person they actually wanted? Most people believe the avoidance collapse moment is about regret over love. It isn't. Not primarily. The mechanism is older and more structural than that. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the collapse moment is, what it dismantles inside the avoidant, why it arrives exactly when it does, and what it means for you, not as an opening, but as the final confirmation that what you built and what you gave was real. Stay to the end. The last 2 minutes of this video say the thing this whole script has been moving toward. Subscribe now. This channel exists to give you the psychological clarity most people spend years looking for. Here is what most people believe about the avoidance collapse moment. They believe the avoidant finally realized how much they loved you, that the loss broke through the defenses and genuine feeling arrived. Too late, but clearly. That what collapsed was the emotional suppression that had been preventing the avoidant from accessing what was always underneath. That is partially true and largely incomplete, because it still locates the collapse in emotion, in love finally surfacing, when the actual mechanism is structural. Here is what the collapse moment actually is. The avoidant's entire relational operating system runs on one foundational assumption: reversibility, not consciously. Below the level of deliberate thought, as a background condition, that makes every exit feel manageable. As long as the option to return exists, as long as you are still carrying something, still oriented toward the possibility of them still available at some level, the pattern is not paying its full price. The cost of each withdrawal is deferred. The loss is theoretical. The damage is acknowledged but not yet irrevocable. The collapse moment is the specific, dateable instant when that background assumption is permanently invalidated. Not when they miss you, not when they feel regret, when they encounter direct, undeniable evidence that the option no longer exists. You've moved forward in a way that cannot be reversed. You're building something real. You're with someone who receives you fully. You've made a decision that has a before and after. The door is not just closed. The building has been replaced. And the avoidance entire system, which was running the deferred cost program, suddenly has to account for the full price at once. That is the collapse. Not love arriving. A system encountering the one condition it was never designed to process. Permanent loss of an option it never valued enough to keep. There are 5 phases that describe how the collapse moment arrives and what it does. The first is the extended deferral phase. This is the long baseline period, the entire duration during which the avoidance reversibility assumption was intact. Every withdrawal was manageable because return was theoretically available. Every silence was safe because you were still there in some form. Externally, the avoidant moved through the post-separation period with their characteristics: self-sufficiency, functioning, independent, processing their own way on their own timeline. Internally, the reversibility assumption was doing significant psychological work. It was absorbing the deferred cost of the pattern. Every action that damaged the connection was filed under recoverable. Every choice that created distance was categorized as still reversible. The avoidant was not okay in a simple sense, but they were managed. The system was running without crisis because the foundational assumption held. The second phase is the signal accumulation phase. Gradually, not in a single moment, data begins arriving that contradicts the reversibility assumption. You are less available than before. Your energy has shifted. The quality of any remaining contact is different. There is a self-possession in how you move through your own life that the avoidant, whose system is attuned to relational signals, begins to register. Externally, they continue functioning, may even increase contact slightly, testing without fully acknowledging their testing, whether the availability that was assumed is still intact. Internally, the assumption is developing cracks, not yet collapsed, but the certainty it once produced has been replaced by something more effortful. The story that says they're still there, if I need them to be, requires more maintenance now. The evidence supporting it is thinner. The system is in pre-collapse state. The load-bearing structure is taking visible stress. The third phase is the threshold event phase. This is the moment the collapse is triggered, and it is important to understand it with precision. The threshold event is not always dramatic. It can be something remarkably ordinary. A social post that reveals a different chapter has started. A mention from a mutual contact. A specific quality of absence that is distinct from the managed absence of the separation period. What makes it a threshold event is not its external magnitude. It is what it does to the reversibility assumption. It ends it. Externally, the avoidant may go unusually quiet, or may reach with sudden urgency they haven't demonstrated before. Both are responses to the same internal event. Internally, the system is processing the collapse of its foundational condition. The deferred cost of every exit, every silence, every moment where connection was available and was not taken. It is no longer deferred. It is arriving. All of it. At once. The emotional dynamic does not shift. It ruptures. What was a managed distance becomes an unmanaged recognition that the distance has become permanent in a direction the avoidant did not choose and cannot reverse. The fourth phase is the accounting phase. With the reversibility assumption gone, the avoidance system runs an inventory it has never had to run before with this particular weight. Not what did I lose in the abstract. What specifically? What qualities? What possibilities? What version of themselves was available inside that connection that has not been available anywhere else? Because the depth of what you offered, the specific quality of how you loved, was not a generic thing. It was particular to you and to what existed between you. Externally, this phase is often invisible. The avoidant does not typically broadcast the accounting. Internally, memory is doing the work the deactivation system was always routing around. The specific texture of moments. The particular quality of being known. What was possible between you that the pattern prevented from fully existing. And the accounting produces its result. The loss is real. The loss is specific. The loss has a shape that exactly matches what was there and what the pattern destroyed before it could fully become what it was becoming. The fifth phase is the unresolvable position phase. The collapse moment does not produce resolution. It produces its opposite. Externally, the avoidant may reach, finally, with the urgency they couldn't produce before. Or they may not. The avoidant system, even under the pressure of collapse, often cannot translate internal recognition into fluid, vulnerable, direct action. Internally, the position is genuinely unresolvable. They cannot return to the deferral phase because the reversibility assumption is gone. They cannot reach forward with confidence because they have no ground to stand on, no earned trust, no demonstrated change, no evidence that they have done the work that would make a different outcome possible. They are standing at the edge of what the pattern produced, looking at the closed door, with no key, and the understanding, quiet, devastating, complete, that they had the key the whole time, and used it to lock themselves out. Before the next section, I want to stop, because this video is asking you to hold something that is genuinely difficult. Understanding someone who hurt you, seeing the mechanism behind the damage, knowing that the collapse is real, and feeling maybe some version of, I knew it would get here. I always knew. So tell me something. In the comments right now, was there a moment when you knew it was the last chance? Before they did? Drop it below. Not the whole story, just the moment. Because your moment might be exactly what someone else watching this needs to hear. Most people, when they understand the collapse moment, experience the pull toward one of two responses. The first is the vindication response. Satisfaction that the pattern finally met its consequence. That what was dismissed is now being felt as loss. The second is the rescue response. The impulse to be available at the moment the avoidant has finally visibly broken open. To say, I'm still here. I see what this cost you. Let's try again. Both responses misuse what the collapse moment actually is. Vindication is natural, but it keeps your emotional world organized around their process. And, your emotional world belongs to you, not to monitoring the temperature of their eventual reckoning. The rescue response is the more dangerous one, because it is generated by genuine compassion and genuine love, and it still costs you something important. If you make yourself available at the moment of their collapse, you remove the one thing the collapse was building toward: the full, unmitigated accounting. The complete experience of irreversible loss. The condition that, if the avoidant ever does genuine work, needs to have been fully felt to generate real motivation. The avoidant who is rescued from the collapse moment has not yet paid the full price of the all. Pattern. And the pattern's price is what would motivate genuine change. The grounded response is the hardest one, and the most honest. You let the collapse be theirs, completely, without inserting yourself as the solution to the problem their pattern created. Not with cruelty, with the clear understanding that your availability now is not love. It is the interruption of the consequence that was always the only thing capable of producing something different. 5 principles govern how you hold this understanding with clarity and without losing yourself to the complexity of it. The first is called irreversibility acceptance. The last chance passed, not as punishment, not as a decision you made in anger, as the natural consequence of time and genuine forward movement. Irreversibility acceptance means you hold that finality for yourself as clearly as the avoidant is now encountering it. You don't leave doors open in the back of your mind against the possibility that the collapse produces something new. The closing is real, and accepting it fully is what allows you to build forward, without looking back at every sound. The second principle is called cost recognition for yourself. The avoidant is currently encountering the cost of their pattern. You encountered yours earlier, and throughout the months of adjusting, the hope maintained past its expiration date. The version of yourself that was quieter, smaller, more careful than you needed to be because the dynamic asked that of you. Cost recognition for yourself means you name those costs. Specifically, honestly, not to dwell in them, but to close the accounting. You know what this cost. You don't minimize it. And you don't carry it forward into a relationship where the cost was never yours to pay. The third is called pattern audit. You now understand the reversibility assumption that ran through the avoidance system. The honest question, and this is the one that builds genuine protection going forward, is what was the equivalent assumption running through yours? The assumption that eventually they would change. That your consistency was investment that would eventually compound. That the good moments were the true indicator, and the pattern was the exception. Naming your own, operating assumptions clearly without blame is what prevents them from running in your next significant connection. The fourth principle is called closure self-authorization. Closure does not require the avoidant to provide it. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement, not a final conversation that names what happened and why. You are authorized, now today, without any of that, to close this fully. To complete the narrative in your own mind with the accuracy you've built, the understanding you now have, the honest account of what was real, and what it cost. Self-authorized closure is more durable than closure that depends on the other person's participation, because it exists on a foundation only you control. The fifth is called forward investment specificity. The energy that was held in reserve, organized around the possibility of this dynamic, around what might still be possible if enough changed, that energy is now fully released. Forward. Investment specificity means you direct it somewhere specific, not vaguely into yourself. Into a concrete thing, a project, a relationship, a version of your life you are actively constructing. Specific investment creates forward momentum that is self-sustaining. Vague investment dissipates. Be specific about what comes next. Here is the truth this video has been moving toward from its first line. The collapse moment is not yours to witness. It is not yours to respond to. It is not yours to save the avoidant from, soften for them, or make more bearable by offering your continued presence. The collapse moment belongs entirely to them. What belongs to you is everything that made the collapse possible. the genuine depth of what you offered, the specific quality of love you brought, the patience, the consistency, the willingness to be fully present in a dynamic that was not always returning. That presence with equivalent care, none of that was wasted. It was the exact thing that made the loss irreplaceable. You don't measure your worth by whether the collapse produces an opening. You measure it by the clarity with which you can walk forward now, knowing exactly what you gave, knowing exactly what the pattern couldn't hold, knowing exactly what you deserve in every connection that follows. You don't wait for the collapse to confirm what you already knew. You take what you know, and you build with it, right now, in the direction that has nothing to do with whether they ever find their way through the door they lock themselves out of. Zoom all the way out. The avoidance collapse moment is one of the most psychologically significant events in their relational history. For many avoidants, it is the first time the pattern has produced a consequence so specific, so irreversible, so undeniably self-authored, that the self-protective narrative cannot absorb it. Self-worth is not restored by their collapse. It was present the entire time, in every choice you made to love genuinely, to stay honestly, to leave when staying was no longer an accurate reflection of your own standards. Emotional intelligence is not the ability to produce the collapse. It is the ability to understand it, hold it with the right amount of weight, and make your next decision from clarity rather than from the emotional charge the collapse generates. Personal power is not standing outside the closed door waiting to see if it opens. It is having already built something worth walking toward on the other side. The last chance was theirs to take. They didn't. That ending belongs to them. Everything that comes next belongs to you. If this video named the thing you've been carrying, leave one sentence in the comments. Not the whole story, the sentence that hit, the one that finally said it clearly. And if you want to understand what happens to the avoidant after the collapse moment, whether the pattern can genuinely change, what real healing looks like from the inside, and how you would recognize it if it ever arrived, the next video is already there. That's exactly where this series goes. Go watch it now.